You are a warrior.
321 status.
What kind of vehicle is it?
You are the very best your nation has to offer.
911.
Multiple shots fired.
They're asking you to lead.
5. We need a Bearcat.
It's up to us.
So 133. I need somebody that's got a visual on where the shooter is.
You must be sound in mind, body, and spirit.
42, where's the officer down? I have a rescue helicopter that wants to land and help.
This is the podcast that will make you the one.
Copy, running eastbound.
The one that will bring everyone back.
I believe we have shots fired. Give me back up now.
Because no one else is coming.
We're going to have an officer shot. 100 block of East Street.
Suspect is down.
This is the Squad Room.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to this episode of The Squad Room. I'm your host, Garrett Tesla, and this is the podcast that helps you, the modern warrior, achieve your full potential and fulfill your purpose as a first responder. This show is about being a better modern warrior. How can you be the leader this world needs you to be and be the very best version of yourself possible every day? You must understand that as a first responder, you are a leader. It is my firm belief that we are the absolute best our nations have to offer, and that we must burden ourselves with leading others if we are to save our country. We are our nation's modern warriors. I'm not just speaking to Americans here. There are over 90 countries listening to the show, and in each one, I think we can find ways that leadership is missing, and that people are looking for someone to show them the way. That's you. Before we get to the interview today, I want to remind you that you can get more information on this episode, including the show notes and links, by going to thesquadroom.net. You can also subscribe on iTunes and Stitcher, and follow me on Instagram and Twitter at on the Facebooks. You can search the Squad Room group and join our Facebook group. You can just follow our page on Instagram and Twitter. We're at the Squad Room. Now, if you notice, the mics might sound a little different. I'm on the road. I'm trying out something new. I'm out of town for training, and have my road setup going. So I have made a mini studio inside of my hotel room, and hopefully this is sufficient at least to get us through the intro. My guest today is a guy that many of you actually have asked for, but many of you have probably never heard of. But he's going to provide you with some excellent information. The knowledge he's going to share, there's a reason I wanted him on the show. But a lot of you asked for him, and I'm glad we were able to get him. Rob Shaul of Mountain Tactical Institute out of Wyoming. And I'm going to let Rob explain how he got into training cops and first responders, military athletes. But Rob is he's a patriot. He's a lover of the first responders, and he does a lot of good work for us. I've been using some of Rob's work on and off. I started in October of last year and was on it pretty hard for a little while. It's great stuff. It's CrossFit-esque in that it's functional and it's dynamic and it's ever-changing. But it is really its own program, and I'll let him explain all that. But he's got a lot to do with helping cops, and he does a lot with the mindset too, and does a lot. His website is full of great essays that we'll link to and that we talk about in the show and that we'll link to in the show notes about the obligation to be fit and what it takes to be a first responder and some of that mental aspects of it. So Rob really approaches the tactical athlete holistically, and it's a great conversation. You should check them out. Their website is MTN, short for mountain, mtntactical.com. You can follow them on Instagram at mountain_tactical. And again, we'll have information in the show notes. So here's my interview with Rob Shaul of Mountain Tactical Institute, and I'll talk to you again after the interview. Rob Shaul of Mountain Tactical Institute, welcome to the Squad Room, man. Thanks for being here.
Hey, Garrett. Thanks for having me.
Excited to have this conversation. We've tried to connect a few times. The flu, some forest fires, other things have gotten in our way. So lucky to have you here. So let's get into real quick on what Mountain Tactical is and what you do for first responders, and then that'll frame the rest of the conversation.
Yeah, Mountain Tactical Institute is we're a strength conditioning facility and kind of a research facility here in Wyoming. And we design fitness and other types of programming for mountain and tactical athletes. And as part of that, we work with law enforcement and fire rescue athletes. We started about 10 years ago. I'm a self-taught strength coach, and I started a gym here in Jackson, Wyoming. I'm from a little town in Wyoming south of here, and I began working with mountain guides up here initially, and we were just putting our training online at the time, and started getting calls and emails from military U.S. soldiers downrange in Iraq and Afghanistan who are following our stuff, and pretty soon they started requesting that we design for military athletes. And the first tactical plan I designed was an Afghanistan pre-deployment training plan for U.S. and NATO soldiers with deployment orders to Afghanistan to mountainous regions. They didn't know how to train up for that, and that was a good fit for us with our work on the mountain athlete side. And we gave that plan away to thousands of guys. Multiple battalions use it for their entire battalion before deploying and everything. And we worked with military athletes for 2-3 years along with our mountain. And then I started getting emails from law enforcement officers who were kind of following our military stuff and wanted us to work on designing programming just for LE athletes. And we started doing that, and then pretty soon we had fire rescue guys doing the same thing. So now we kind of changed our name to the Mountain Tactical Institute, and now work on fitness program design and other type of work for mountain and tactical athletes. Our mission statement or whatever is to improve mission performance for mountain and tactical athletes and keep them safe. So primarily what we do is fitness programming design, but we also we've done work on decision making, actually some firearms training, different areas. We're not strictly limited to fitness, but so what we do mostly. And the other element that's kind of different about us is we have a real strong research bent. And now we're pretty much a research facility where we do different research on fitness program design and other things like that. And so we are always improving, and we hope to get what we learn, improve our programs, and get them out there to guys and men and women who are kind of on the front lines in these different worlds that we work with.
So on this show, we have a heavy focus or an emphasis on being the one out of 100 people that can be the real true warrior that can, in the famous quote, bring the others back. But what we mean by that, and I'll just share the whole quote because I do this with with some other guests, and so our newer listeners understand the dynamic here. So this is a quote from Heraclitus from 2,500 years ago. It says, "Out of every 100 men, 10 shouldn't even be there. 80 are just targets. 9 are the real fighters, and we are lucky to have them, for they make the battle. But the one is a warrior, and he will bring the others back." So in the frame of thinking about that quote, Rob, and being the one to bring the others back, for us in law enforcement, it could be safety, it could be bringing your partners back. But what does that mean to you for when you're working with first responders?
We like to have a what we call and you've heard this before, a quiet professional ethic. And kind of what we like to do and what we've learned about others is, I think when you hear a quote like that, you maybe envision a hero or somebody who's truly exceptional. But we kind of believe in the quiet professional ethic, which is we kind of like guys who are grinders and just keep getting better and better and always looking to improve. And I think that attitude, that being professional about all the different elements of your job, is, in my mind, that person who brings the others back. It's not a flash in the pan thing. It just develops such a solid foundation of all the different areas of professionalism in the tactical worlds, leadership, fitness, technical skills, tactics, all that stuff. I guess that's how I would identify that person. At least from my own perspective, that's the type of person I really respect. Is not the greatest athlete, not the most natural shot, but the person who just keeps grinding, keeps at it, and is professional and continuous improvement, and eventually just kind of worked his way or her way to the top and well respected by his or her peers.
Yeah, I like that a lot, and you have a great article about the quiet professional that I'll post in the show notes for people to read, because I think it's totally in line with the ethos of this show, which I talk about a lot, and I use a different phrase, but it's the same thing about that we must fight in the shade, meaning that we must be, and it's, again, another story going back to the Spartans, but the idea that we should be comfortable fighting with adversity and being comfortable going and doing our jobs amidst a population that may not want us there, may not respect us, may not appreciate us, but that by going in and being that quiet professional, we're doing the job that we signed up for, and we're making the most of the opportunities we have when we swear that oath. So I totally agree. I think you've got, 13 or 14 different aspects of being that quiet professional. And I'd even go through all of them with you here if you don't mind, because I think they're just on point with what it takes. And then we'll get to the strength and conditioning stuff, some of the basic tips after that. Does that work for you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so for your idea of the quiet professional, and this was an article that you've updated a few times, but the first one you have here is service. Now, that's obviously something that'll speak to the first responders and the military guys. What does the service aspect mean in this?
Yeah, what's interesting about all of these is it's not like you just have them. They're things that you're always ideally trying to work towards, and you never quite get there, and you can always see improvement. And certainly that's my own case. But in this we mean kind of service to your team, to your family, to your community, to your profession, a promise keeper, someone who is reliable and solid. Mm-hmm. So we're just this idea of understanding that it's not about you, and how that can be. Once you kind of get over that self-absorption that things aren't about you, and you start looking at helping other people and doing what's best for the community and your profession, it's really it's altruistic, but it's also really liberating. You can put a lot of effort into worrying about yourself, and once you stop doing that, it's kind of liberating if you're ever able to kind of embrace this idea of service. Mm-hmm. And it's one of those things I kind of like the way Aristotle thinks about all the virtues, is that you never quite get there, and sometimes you take one step forward and two steps back. Not in every instance are you perfect, but the overall goal is just to keep working towards that ideal, and to not beat yourself up too much. So on the way, so the idea of service is just to serve other people and your community, and just kind of embrace that idea that it's not about you. Mm-hmm. And
which goes into that second idea of mission first. I think we sometimes it's easy for us to get wrapped up in, you just said, it's not about me. But putting the mission of our agencies, the mission of our profession, of our calling, ahead of us is. How do you help people parse that out and see that when the mission comes first, that they will ultimately win on a personal level? That idea of it's interesting in this world that we have, especially social media now, where the idea of being a quiet professional and service here specifically is that a lot of times the things that you do aren't seen by anybody and really aren't meant to be noticed by anybody, but they're really still an integral part of that service. Mm-hmm. And I think the idea rolls around right into the idea of mission first when it comes to your profession. And we've asked our users or our followers to do essays, and a really good essay we came in was actually we asked our users one time to write my biggest leadership mistake, and one of the ones that we got in came from a military officer, and his boss was kind of a jerk, and he was, I think, the chief of staff or someplace close, high to the boss, and he ended up kind of being the buffer between his boss and all the complaints from below. But what was interesting in this is that he, instead of supporting his leader, who was a sound leader, was just maybe abrasive,
he kind of let the whining continue and undercut his boss a little bit in that journey ahead. And he took a look back at that and he said, I didn't put the mission of our unit first. I should have supported him more, stood up, to the ones down below and moved forward that way. So it's just that kind of idea. I learned a lot from, the people on the tactical side. I'm not a tactical athlete. I'm just a strength conditioning coach, right? But we've learned a lot from those people. But that idea of, that you kind of suck it up. Maybe you don't do what's popular. You don't do what's going to bring you attention. You kind of identify what needs to be done to achieve the mission or is the best for the unit. And sometimes that means, maybe taking charge, and sometimes that means maybe getting out of the way. And but what determines what happens is the mission first element of it, and identifying what that is, and then being true to that.
I think that's a key element that we often miss in leadership discussions, and when we're training up our leaders, is the importance of followership too, and that good leaders will, like your client was just describing, will sometimes do their best leadership when they follow. When they follow the chain, or they respect the mission and they follow what the mission's goals are, not their own. That's an interesting one, and we can post some of those links too. So hard work, you mentioned that one. Grinders, the quiet professional is a grinder. I think a lot of us understand that one. But in that too, it sounds like, just like you kind of just said, 2 steps forward, maybe 1 step back, but you're always moving forward. You're always trying to push and be that one day stronger. Is that right when you say hard work is part of the quiet professional?
Yeah, I think a lot of times in the fitness world, we see this all the time, and people are always looking for shortcuts, whether it's be a supplement or the latest fitness trend. And I think it takes a path. Certainly, some of us are more wise than others, and they realize this stuff earlier. I'm not one of those people, so it's taken me to my 40s to kind of realize there's really no shortcut. And the way to craftsmanship, whatever your profession is just to keep on grinding in those little small steps forward. And those small steps forward is the overall improvement is just accumulation of those steps. And there's no glory in that grind. It's just a grind. There's just no way about it. I've yet to meet a really successful person who just isn't a really, really hard worker and a really, well-read and just grinds and is continually trying to improve stuff. When we talk about that, excuse me, I kind of identified this three-step path for grinders. And I say, the first is the expectation. You're kind of supposed to work hard. I went to the Coast Guard Academy and was in the military, and the organization, the peers, everybody kind of expected it. So you kind of fall in that role. I'm supposed to work hard, so I'm gonna. And then there's the next step is you kind of like, okay, I'm kind of known as a hard worker, and so my pride, I'm always going to work hard just because that's part of my pride and how I self-identify. But the final step is what I call the craft. And whereas you're doing it for somebody else, the expectation, or maybe for vanity or your reputation out of pride, when you kind of realize that the hard work you're putting in is part of the craft, it's not an annoyance anymore. It's not a burden. It's you're working on your craft, you're working on your baby, and the hard work you put in isn't really work. It's just kind of part of that journey. And the journey is kind of everything, and that's kind of where you get your enjoyment from. Is the getting humbled by the profession, or in my job or in everybody's job. We're all getting humbled if we're true to what we're trying to do and always improving. You don't you kind of stop working hard with gritted teeth because it's expected or it's your pride, and you kind of start working hard with a full heart. Anyway, if you're able to make that shift from organizational expectations and personal pride to understanding that this craft or this profession, and it's a beautiful thing, The work's still the same. It still can be drudgery, but the path and the journey, it's just part of the wisdom journey, I think, that hopefully we all make when it comes to our profession if you're truly dedicated to it.
I love that. I love that idea of craft, and that this can be a craft, and that the elements of the job, that the job still may be a grind or challenging, but that you can take pride in the craft of the things that we do. And I'm thinking, like just getting to the gym sometimes is honing the craft of being a tactical athlete, right? Or firearms training on a day where you just don't want to go shoot, although I don't know when that happens, but or working even on little things like improving your grammar in English so that your reports are cleaner. You're working on that craft, and that grind is difficult, but what a beautiful way to think about this job that is at times just seemingly drudgery, but that there's always an element of craft in what we're doing. And there's always, even in the lame stuff like court testimony or report writing or those sorts of things, we have the opportunity to improve the craft. And that's really, I like that. That's cool. I got to think about that one for a while now, because that's fun. So the next one is one that I think every cop with any amount of time on will get. Number 4 of your elements of being a quiet professional is understanding the difference between experience and wisdom. And I kind of chuckled when I saw this, because there's 2 words in law enforcement that we use all the time, and you might be familiar with them, but we use them in our reports. Of course, we don't operate on hunches, and we don't operate on guesses, but we use our quote-unquote training and experience. And that's what we put into reports when we write, based on my training and experience, I believe this person to be under the influence of methamphetamine. Or based on my training experience, I believe that bulge in the man's pocket was possibly a gun, et cetera, right? But when I was thinking about this in preparation for our call and this idea of experience, there's a gap there between what you can do with experience and turning that into wisdom. And so what do you mean by understanding the difference?
Well, everybody has experience. If you're living or you're, a patrol officer, you're going to get experience. It just comes with the things you do every day. Mm-hmm. But wisdom takes work. And there's kind of a to-do list you have to do. The first one is you have to learn from your mistakes. So you can have experience something and then make the same mistake next time, right?
Yeah, done that.
That part of the wisdom is, learning from your mistakes, and this takes, uncomfortable reflection sometimes. Sometimes a clear-eyed self-examination, saying, hey, I put myself here, acknowledging and owning that responsibility. Maybe some penance. These, our quiet professional ideas, not only, professional work, in professional life, but also your personal life. Maybe you have to do some penance, and then enact and commitment to do better next time. Forgiveness, I think, is part of learning from experience. Forgiving others is liberating, but often the most difficult thing is to forgive yourself and say, I really messed that up. Here's what happened going in. Okay, time to move on. I forgive myself. I'm going to do better next time, instead of just regretting it and dwelling it over it. I put in there part of wisdom is kind of the idea that you're to embrace death, and to understand that not only that death is coming, but you're going to have diminished capacity as you get older, and to spend your time that you do have on truly important commitments and relationships. All wise people do this. They stop doing the unnecessary things, and they really are conscious about how they spend their time. This may or may not be more on a personal side or on the professional side, but often it can also be on the professional side. I think the wise law enforcement officer understands what's important in his job and spends his time or her time there, maybe not on some of the other things. Being tolerant is part of that. All the wise people that I've met don't have artificial hang-ups that we all kind of have when we're younger, over clothes or differences or things like that. They those kind of differences, superficial differences, kind of crumble under the scrutiny of wisdom. And wise people are just seem to be really tolerant. They're resilient and they're adaptable, and they understand that kind of what's important and minor differences between us aren't. There's this idea, I think, also that wise people have, which is a detachment from expectations. So maybe on the profession, your leader or your organization or something has some expectations that in your wisdom you understand just isn't really important, and you're strong enough and wise enough to understand that and reflect and act on what you think is important. And finally, another one I identified is just to be really humble. Understand that you're not owed anything. Life's not fair. You're not special. We're all kind of insignificant, and it's just let all that that kind of that self-absorption go. Just kind of roll your sleeves up and keep grinding away.
So those are all great and so many things. I mean, we could have an episode on each one of these things that you just spoke on. But I want to, at the end of this, I want to learn a little bit more about your own path towards this wisdom, because I'm really intrigued by that. So number 5 in this list is knowing what to do is easy, but doing it is hard. As someone who dragged their rear out of bed at 05 this morning to go to the gym, I know that it's harder to do than it is to say. So let's talk about that one for a little bit.
Yeah, that the general idea is that 95% of our day-to-day decisions don't really matter. Where we eat lunch, kind of what we wear, some of those things are kind of become habit. 5% do really matter. And these can be anything, from, always wearing your seatbelt, all those tactical things that, and preparation things that police officers and law enforcement guys have to do, as part of just getting ready for their shift or whatever. Just health decisions do matter. Make sure you're brushed, make sure you floss, diet, your nutrition, make sure you're not drinking too much. Make sure you're getting your cancer screenings or you're getting your 50s like I am. Those are fairly direct, and we can get lazy with some of those smaller decisions, but those aren't the ones. We kind of know what to do. Mm-hmm. The bigger decisions that come along in life, which kind of put our hearts, our emotions versus our minds, are the hard ones where we kind of go in these endless decision loops of making a list and you can't really decide. And those are the tough ones. I can only kind of reflect on some of the things that I've learned in my life on how to handle those really hard decisions, where your mind is telling you one thing, but your heart is telling you the other. And the first thing I've kind of learned is that if you know what you're doing now is wrong, to stop doing it, even if you don't know what's going to take its place. The easiest example here is just a relationship. If you're dating somebody and it's just not going to work, the best thing is to stop that relationship, even if you don't know, if you've got maybe a better idea would be a job or a profession. You're working a job, or for somebody right now, it's just not working out. And the best thing to do is to stop doing it, even if you don't know what you're going to do next. And the reason is that if you do that, then it gives you the space and forces you to find the next thing. It may not be perfect, but you will stop doing the wrong thing. The other thing I've kind of learned is that if you kind of put off making a decision, you don't really put it off. After a while, you kind of end up making the decision, and you lose opportunities that may have come along by not making that decision earlier.
That's absolutely right. Yep. Mm-hmm.
So not making a decision is a decision, and that's something to really think about. That if you always want to start a business, or you always wanted to maybe get out of law enforcement, become a firefighter, and you wait till you're 40, it's probably too late.
I don't know about that.
Or maybe the other way.
Joking for the firefighter guys. So yeah, I have this reminder that goes off on my phone. I have it set off to go kind of randomly throughout different days that says, "Do the hard thing," and It's just a reminder to myself that the hard thing is almost always going to be the right thing, and it's almost always going to be the thing that will give me the long-term results that I want. And it's exactly that, what you say, that make a hard decision now rather than putting it off, because just like you said, no decision is a decision. So I even have to remind myself all the time, do the hard thing, because that's probably what's going to be the right thing to do. There's no easy way out of this life, right?
Yeah, that's a classic case. If you kind of know what the right decision is, but doing it is the hard part. But knowing isn't. You kind of know what it is.
I think we all instinctively know, and when we're challenged. And one of the benefits of age, you've talked about, gaining this wisdom yourself recently or after 40 was knowing when I'm out of character, right? Instead of being defensive about it and making excuses for myself, being able to understand and acknowledge, that's not me there, or that's not who I want to be or what I'm about. And again, accepting that, forgiving yourself for it, but then changing it. That's the challenge, right?
Yeah, that identifying. I don't know if I've ever, thought about it that way. I'd hate to have you ask me what my, who am I right now? I would. That'd be a tough one. Another one we have here is just I kind of learned that whenever you decide against integrity, it always comes with a significant painful cost. The moral integrity stuff is more clear. Don't steal, don't lie, those types of things. When you make a decision and you do one of those things, there's always a cost to it. You're going to pay for it. But those are easier to identify, and we're not always perfect on that. And again, I kind of fall back to Aristotle, where the goal isn't to be a saint, but to get better all the time, and hopefully move those virtuous and integrity, clear moral integrity issues to the habit stage where you just make them and you don't think about them. Mm-hmm. The more difficult ones are what I call personal integrity. Maybe this goes back to what you had talked about. And personal integrity is who you are and want to be, and it can get murky where there's kind of who you are and who you want to be can be two different things. Maybe you're this person now, but you want to be this type of person. Mm-hmm. And again, this kind of comes up in lots of examples and decisions of, should I change a career? Should I get out of this relationship? Should I maybe ask for this promotion or try? Those types of things come up, and those are the more difficult ones. And when I kind of think about those decisions, I try to pay attention. A lot of times for some reason, I end up doing a lot of life coaching in my job, and kind of on the side, I guess. not really by design, but some person will come to me with a decision, one of these hard ones that kind of pushes, this personal integrity. And I've always tell them, take a look at what your actions are. What are you doing now? That's what you're doing is kind of who you are. And sometimes people will overlook kind of what they're doing day to day. And sometimes that'll give you clarity on what maybe is the path forward for you. That's a tough one, though. Those are always difficult decisions. Again, our list here are just hopefully things that'll help you as you make those.
No, yeah, it is. But I mean, it's easy to kind of go deep into that, because one of our tenets is that you got to align your values, your beliefs, and your actions. Right, and like you just said, your actions are really who you are today, and that doesn't mean that it always has to be that way. You can change those things, but if you talk a good game, as I have at times in my life, and not acted the same good game, you're out of alignment, and you're never going to be able to get any momentum towards improvement if those things are out of whack. And I've always found that in the times of my life where I am under the most stress, or I'm challenged the most at work, or I'm suffering from some sort of organizational behavioral issue, it's probably because my actions and my thoughts aren't in alignment. They're two different things. It takes a lot of self-reflection to identify those things, but again, going from experience to wisdom, that has been the biggest learning thing I think I've learned over the last couple of years, is that I have got to make sure my actions, beliefs, and values are all in alignment. And I know that this list is really it's about doing those things, getting those things in alignment. So 6 is humility and humor. Both, I think cops are very good at both. But what do you mean? What do you mean in this sense?
Yeah, the humility, boy, in my 30s, especially my 20s and kind of extended into my 30s, I got my ass kicked quite a bit in my 30s, and so it helped with this. But I was really righteous. I knew, I was just convinced of so many different things. And kind of what I found is that I've just been proven wrong so many times. I've come to become much less righteous and see the world in not so much black and white, but much more gray. And now when I catch myself being righteous and I get my butt kicked, I'm able to step back and just kind of laugh it off. And that, and together, laugh at myself really, and have some humor about it. And together I've kind of found that humility and humor, as I've personally kind of worked on my own path towards hopefully becoming more wise, they kind of work together. I'm able to understand kind of what my limits are and identify when I'm being righteous. And even though I can identify it, sometimes I'm still righteous. I can't help myself. But then at least now I can say, oh man, you're just being, you're just out of line here. I'm able to take a step back and laugh at myself. And these two kind of work together. And ideally, and are kind of what I've kind of found pushing me to have more solace in my life, just more solace about who I am and where I am, and not so. I guess that for me, that's one of the things that is maybe the ultimate goal, is to have some solace and be able to live better in the present. That's kind of what we're after, I think.
Sure.
But anyway, those two are brothers. I still have hissy fits and I get angry and stuff like that, but now I'm able to take a step back and say, boy, you're acting like a 3-year-old right there, and laugh at myself a little bit more.
How do you, that's another one. That's another big, I think, maybe these are just things that I'm discovering, and that's why I enjoyed this list so much, was the ability to laugh at yourself in those situations, not when you do some sort of physical pratfall or something, but when you really kind of, gotten ahead of yourself. That takes some more of that wisdom instead of experience. Yeah. So the next one's continual professional learning. I think cops will get this one, but explain that for me.
Yeah, that it seems that all really accomplished people. And I mean, truly accomplished, not just, maybe well-known, are just always continually learning. And it's part of what we spoke a little bit before, about this idea of the craft with your profession. And maybe at first it's kind of driven by competitiveness or ambition. You wanted to take the lieutenant's test or get your master's degree so you could move faster up the chain. But now, at least for me, as I get to my stage in my career on the strength conditioning stuff, I kind of just want to be better. I ideally am continually learning, not as a burden or as an expectation, but just because I want to become better at my craft and also respect the profession. And that's part of the way I show it, is by continually to learning about it. But it seems that that's just a common trait or habit of real quiet professionals, is they're always continually learning.
The next one is one I'm not even going to ask you to expand on it, because I think it's so succinct and perfect that I'm going to just read it. Do your job quietly, consistently, professionally well every day. I mean, I don't think there's much more to be said about that. And that itself is simpler said than done, but I think that is a ethos that we can all understand. The next one, don't get too far from your purpose. I thought when I read that, I was like, what do you mean?
This really, I've been really influenced by Stoicism, and this kind of comes from the Stoics. I think, when you're in your, mid-career, I think for most people, they kind of know what their purpose is, especially on the career side. And the idea is to embrace that, embrace the idea that your profession is a way that you serve other people, and that it should be a big, huge focus of your life. Quiet professionals, they don't live for the weekend. They don't live for their vacations. They enjoy those, they have fun with them, but their really deep engagement and joy is really their work and their profession. And it's never too far from the front of their mind. It just is, and it's not a burden. Again, it's their craft, it's their baby, it's kind of who they are. So it's the idea that work isn't a burden, it's part of who you are, and it enriches your life and the others you serve through your work. Obviously, on the law enforcement side and first responder side, it's so clear what that service is, how you are able to hopefully get to the idea where it isn't a burden anymore, that you're not going to your job every day with gritted teeth, but really with clear eyes and kind of a full heart and just enjoying the engagement and the learning and all the craft that comes with it. So that's kind of the idea. And I just kind of found that I've never found, especially men, I've never met a man who thought he was underemployed or in the wrong job who was happy. I think that for men especially, work on a job you think that is worthy of your talents is really a key part of your self-image and your self-worth, and also part of your happiness. Mm-hmm. And the ones who are able to take it really to that next level where they really embrace it and it becomes a craft of theirs, maybe reach that ultimate, enjoyment and they get the most of the work, not only service to others, but also back to themselves.
It's something, we use that word burden too, and I've written about this on social media and on the blog. If it's not out by the time we talk about it here, it will be soon on a shorter episode about called this idea that my burden is my gift. And what I mean by that is that work, there are times at work where I will accept the burden of society, of the expectations, and what they expect of me, the burden of missing Christmases and birthday parties and Little League games and those sorts of things, and that it is in those moments where the job is the most burdensome, where it is actually my gift to my country and my community in the sense that of my service, and that when the job seems burdensome, that is when you need to turn that idea around and reflect that it is when you're giving your biggest gift to the community, because that's when it's its toughest. The flip side of that is that we have the opportunity to be part of a group that is high performers, that have the utmost integrity, that are part of a team that have a common mission like this, that are protecting and defending the country, and that it is a gift to me as well at the same time. So while this job may be a burden in that sense, it is actually a gift. So I thought I'd share that with you just because it's in that same idea. The work, and I say burden, but it's really not a burden. It's a gift. It's a gift to others, and it's a gift to ourselves.
Yeah, that's as you described, that's certainly a beautiful idea. Again, I'm not a law enforcement professional, so I don't give that to my community like you guys do, but it is a beautiful idea.
So,
sure.
Thank you. So, embrace the suck. That's the next one. I like that. Life's not fair, right? Some things are hard to do.
Yeah, everything in life is hard. It's just kind of the way it is, and And now I think I get to this stage in my life now where if it's a little too easy, I'm suspicious. Right? I know the stuff's coming. I just, I'm not anxious for it. I just know it's coming, and when it arrives, I'm just like, oh, well, where have you been? But being able to kind of embrace it and understand it's part of the journey, kind of smile, don't whine about it, and just soldier on, I think is part of what, quiet professionals do, no matter what field they're in, and, kind of what comes up, they just embrace this up and keep soldiering on.
The next one is one we've had entire episodes on. There's one of my favorite books. It's the title of one of my favorite books, Resilience. That's a tough one for most anybody, but what have you learned about resilience?
Yeah, I'm still learning about all these things for sure. I think what's interesting about resilience is, at least for me personally, is a big part of resilience is kind of forgiving myself, because resilience always has its roots in some type of failure. And generally, when I do an analysis of why I failed, it's something some kind of personal failure, and being able to kind of identify that, embrace it, but then kind of forget it as I forgive myself and move on. For me, that's been a real key, I think, to being more resilient, because it kind of liberates me to go ahead and step back up to the plate and and try again. Mm-hmm. And also, if you think about that craft and the grind and these things kind of work together, it's just part of the journey. And so, okay, laugh it off, have some humility. I got my ass kicked. I got my butt kicked because of this. I wasn't prepared, or I didn't read enough, or I didn't work hard enough. Okay, I'll do better next time. Have some humor about it, but get back in the saddle, I think. So for me, that idea of forgiving myself and getting back in there is a huge part of it.
And next on, almost at the end of the list, you're living a life of adventure and enthusiasm. That's, I think, one easy for us to miss, between families and kids and weird shift schedules and overtime and being called back to work. It's easy to forget that it's important to live a life of adventure and enthusiasm.
Yeah, I think when we're scarred somewhat by marketing in magazines, and especially men, we're supposed to all drive BMWs and climb Everest and all those things, but the idea of adventure that I'm talking about is much more everyday, much closer to home. It doesn't take these big things, and because it's not as, maybe, I wouldn't say ambitious, but maybe as typical. It's much more accessible, and it could be much more enriching in your life. And that's just the idea. Trying something new. Stepping out of your comfort zone, and on the adventuresome side. And just the idea also is just kind of be enthusiastic about life, no matter what you're doing. Just you're gonna make the best of it. You're gonna have some fun. Have some damn spirit. I write that. Just have some damn spirit. And coach a team, start a business. Guys, in your guys' world, what some of those things are, but maybe volunteer for a certain mission or a certain job, or just something that kind of makes you uncomfortable, or and just do it with enthusiasm. What I've kind of found is that just helps keep you young. And that I have an uncle who's in his 70s, and he goes, Rob, you never stop feeling young. He'll be 78, I think, this year. I think that's just an awesome idea that, it's how you live life and approach it that can really enrich it for you and others.
Yeah, absolutely. The last one here on this list of elements of being a quiet professional is gratitude. That's one that, again, you mentioned your influence from Stoicism. So let's talk about that one for a minute.
Yeah, gratitude is really easy to miss when you're really self-absorbed, and you're not maybe doing all you can in terms of service and supporting the mission, and have some humility and humor. because it helps you when you're kind of like that. You miss some of the great things that are happening, kind of in the present, and having gratitude, but professional and private, for big things and small things, I think really helps. And studies have shown us it just helps make you happier, and more appreciative, and it just makes your life better and enriches it. I think it makes you more aware. I walked out of my house this morning. I wake up really early, and I left my house there around 3:34 a.m. to come into work, and I was kind of whining because it was cold outside. I think it was close to 0 or something. I stepped out, and oh my God, it was so beautiful. And I was able to stand there and shiver just a little bit and just observe the stillness of the winter here in this beautiful place. I live in Wyoming, and the beautiful stars, and the moon glow across the snow, and the crisp, clean air. 10 years ago, of course, when you live here every day, you take it for granted, right? Just like we all do. But that's kind of what gratitude is. It's not taking it for granted. I was able to, and just for a little bit, just say, wow. And 10 years ago, Garrett, I don't know if I would have been able to do that. I would have just whined about how cold it was, and my mind would have been caught up in all the work I had to do when I got here, right?
Sure. Oh, yeah.
But that's a little bit of wisdom, I think, and hopefully that's allowed me to do that.
You mentioned the influence from Stoicism, and I myself have been heavily influenced over the last 4 or 5 years by really diving into and trying to read as much as I can. What prompted your exploration of that philosophy, and what are some of the books you would recommend people? Because it's definitely on an uptick these days.
Yeah, I kind of started reading this stuff in my 20s, and I think the first book I read was Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl.
Sure.
And it's not really on the surface about Stoicism, but that's the thing about Stoics and Frankl is you can't really be a sissy and adhere to their philosophy about how to live. But
I think it's absolutely a Stoicism book, though. I just reread it a couple weeks ago and was reminded how thematic his advice is to stuff that was written 2,500 years ago.
At Auschwitz guy, and he's like, hey, no matter how bad your situation is, even if you're in a concentration camp, you still have a job to do. Others are watching, and he described it, his relatives and the people who believed in him, and he kind of found that, in my situation, my job is to suffer proudly, to be a human, to continue my work, to help counsel others. Wow, talk about light at the no end of the tunnel situation, and he was still able to do that.
Oh, it's amazing.
I've read stuff by John McCain. John McCain has a book on courage. It's a beautiful book. I think it's just called Courage, and he talks about courage and the idea of just the examples he has. He has some real wisdom elements in there, and I'm kind of one of those guys who thinks that sometimes physical courage can be easy. It's the social courage that can be really difficult. Standing up in a meeting when everybody's going to disagree with you. When you're going to be ostracized. Those types of things take a lot of courage. And I think through McCain. I think it was through McCain I learned about Admiral Stockdale in his book, Philosophers of a Fighter Pilot or something, Admiral James Stockdale. And he's the first one who kind of turned me into a picture of this. He won the Medal of Honor. He was a POW with John McCain there in Hanoi Hilton. He was like the commanding officer there. And there's been, he was a Perot's vice president candidate when Ross Perot ran for president. I actually got to hear Admiral Stockdale speak one time at the Naval Academy. But anyway, he's the one that kind of turned me on to Epictetus. I'm not too sure how to say his name. I'm such illiterate, but by far he's my favorite Stoic author. And there's a book that recently came out called The Art of Living, and it's translated by the author, did the translation, named Sharon LaBelle. And I reread that thing, all the time. And The Art of Living is just amazing in terms of, kind of putting in your place. On my desk right now, I have Marcus Aurelius, The Emperor's Handbook. Marcus Aurelius obviously was another great Stoic, and there's just such wisdom in that philosophy that I think is, especially for tactical athletes, really kind of holds true.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, those are all. Meditations is one of my favorites and has been earmarked and dogmarked. And Art of Living is one I haven't dove into yet, but I got to get on that. So, all right. So I'm sure a lot of people are wondering, like, well, okay, great. When are they going to help me like lose fat and build muscle? So I want to ask a couple questions at least about the mountain tactical methodology, because I've been participating, and I didn't tell you this before we got you scheduled for an interview here, but I signed up through your website to download some of the law enforcement programming, and I mean, you've got how many programs you have now that are defined for different things, for different aspects of the job? How many total you think you have?
Yeah, we have over 200. I just wrote a couple more this week, so yeah, we're always adding to them and fixing them up. So
I mean, to give some people some example, and obviously we would just encourage them to go to your website to do this, but the quick version is you've got programming on-ramps for like the FBI Academy and the DEA Academy, and getting on to the SWAT team, but also the different federal SWAT teams. You've got some really unique and specific programming that can help those people achieve goals. You got programs for people to get academy ready. And I'm going through some of the programming that's just for your in-service officer already. Not a specific like on-ramp program, but what is the kind of stuff that someone could expect to find when they go to Mountain Tactical for their programming?
Our kind of our overall philosophy is we take a look at the mission schedule really, or kind of what is looking for the year, and understand that the further the way you are from an event or a selection or a season or a deployment, the more general your fitness can be. And as you get closer to that event, the more sport specific your programming should be on the fitness side to get you specifically prepared for that event. And so in both those types of areas, that general training is what we call base fitness. And we're pretty detailed on the base fitness between the different types of tactical athletes, and even sometimes within the group of tactical athletes. For example, on the law enforcement side, we've kind of identified 3 different types of law enforcement athletes. We've got the patrol detectives who just are doing their day-to-day stuff, full-time SWAT in an urban setting, and then full-time SWAT or SRTs who have rural mission sets. I worked with a Kentucky Special Response Team, and they actually had a pretty intense rural mission set where they had to go hike cliffs to the woods chasing down meth labs, but also like Borstar teams, DEA fast teams, guys like that. And each of those different groups have different fitness demands for their day-to-day work. So we have developed day-to-day programming specifically for wherever you are in that group of a law enforcement athlete. And then also on the other side of that, we've developed training programs specifically on the law enforcement side for athletes preparing for SWAT selection. We actually did quite a bit of research to try to find out for most SWAT teams, what are the events, how long are the selections, and then we developed a SWAT selection training plan for patrol guys and detective guys who want to try out for their unit's SWAT team or for their department SWAT team. And on the federal side, we developed a specific training plan for the Border Patrol BORTAC team, BORTAC selection, for the Border Patrol BORSTAR selection, for DEA FAST, for FBI HRT. We developed one for the Federal Law Enforcement Center fitness test that guys take when they first get there. For the FBI special agent fitness test for people who are tried out for the FBI. So what we've kind of found, that's how come we keep adding programs, and we've developed them for these individual units and fitness tests and things for all the different units out there. And we're getting, as we continue to evolve, we're getting space now where we're able to take and develop more of those individual training plans, even, as far down as maybe one for North Carolina. The state, Texas has its own fitness assessment. It's amazing how many different fitness assessments are out there. But hopefully what we want to do for our tactical athletes is be a resource for them, a partner with them on their fitness side as they go through their careers, where they can use for their day-to-day stuff. They can use this to prepare for special missions they have. If they get injured, we have plans that help them recover or rehab, not necessarily rehab, but come back from injuries to get fit again. All those different levels. If they, if you go, if you're on the road a lot, you go on a motel traveling, we got a motel training plan you can use that covers many of these areas. I don't mean to get too geeky with you, but we're trying to offer people a library of resources that they can use throughout their day-to-day and throughout their careers.
So what are some of the unique aspects of programming for the tactical athlete out there? I mean, one of the things, well, I'll let you answer that, and then I have a follow-up. I don't want to compound the question there. What's unique to the tactical athlete?
From our perspective, there's different types of tactical athletes. Like I described, the fitness demands for an infantryman or a Green Beret are different than for a patrol officer. So that's the one thing that we kind of identify. What are the fitness demands for that athlete? And then how to train for those fitness demands. What is unique, especially as you compare a tactical athlete to a team sport athlete, typical sports, is first of all, the hybrid element of fitness demands are relatively unpredictable. You never know when you go to make a call what's going to happen for sure on the fitness or the physical side. Unlike if you're playing a football game, every play lasts about 7 seconds and you get 40 seconds rest, right?
Yeah.
It's not the same for tactical athletes or mountain athletes either. You never know exactly what is going to be the fitness demand for that event or that shift or whatever. And so developing programming to hopefully prepare you for that unpredictability is really a unique element, I think, for tactical athletes. So that's the main one. We do, even though it's I don't mean to say it's totally random. None of the stuff that we do is random. It's all programmed and thought out and has things that we really want to identify and focus on. For example, on the law enforcement side, I know in the tactical athlete side, one thing's unique is kind of a sprinting ability to sprint under load and recover from short sprints under load. Movement under fire for both law enforcement and military athletes is sprinting under load, stopping, and sprinting again. And we think that for that reason, sprinting and repeat shuttles and shuttle sprints and movement under load, we do tactical agility and weight vests and IBAs and stuff, is a part of the fitness demands that you have. And so we train that, in our programming.
Yeah, you do. I don't think I've done as many shuttle sprints since I was at like freshman basketball tryouts. When I started your program. But I get it. Like, I understand it. And it was something that's lacking from the other programming I've tried, or that, because the mountain tactical stuff is CrossFit-esque, meaning in the sense of it's varied. You're using free weights, you're using barbells, you're using kettlebells, you're using sandbags, you're using body weight. So it's not like you're going to the gym and just using the dumbbells or machines. So that's why I say it's CrossFit-esque. Because people can understand that. But in the other programming I've done, or if you go to a regular box exercise group, there isn't a lot of sprinting. There might be a warm-up lap around the building. There might be some airdyne or some rower, but there rarely was like sprinting. And this was unique in that sense. Was doing a lot of consistent sprinting, which was totally like outside my wheelhouse after all this time.
What is important for us to realize, and it brings a gravity to the work that we do, is all the athletes that we work with they can die or get severely injured doing their job or their sport. And so it's important that the stuff we do on the fitness side reflects and we know it's transferable outside the gym. For us, gym numbers mean nothing. And so it could be that doing, multimodal, stuff in the gym with barbells and stuff it transfers to sprinting work capacity. Mm-hmm. But I can't risk it, right? I know that tactical athletes are going to need sprints, so that's why we sprint.
So you sprint.
Maybe that other stuff works. Maybe I don't know, but I know that if I train with sprinting, I know that'll transfer directly. So that's a big part of what
Sure.
we do is we're always continually saying, does this transfer? If it doesn't, or if there's a question about it, is there something we can find that does transfer? And if so, what is that? So that's kind of what we're after all the time.
One thing, too, that I really got, and I saw the value in, and I'm going to get the word wrong because I can't think of it off the top of my head, but was your emphasis on trunk strength, between the shoulders and the hips, basically. And there's a lot of unique movements in there that really strengthen that and get that in balance. So I thought that was a unique aspect of it, too, to something that I haven't seen in tactical athlete programming before. And what do you call it? It's an acronym, I think.
We call it chassis integrity.
Chassis integrity. That was
Right,
close.
yeah.
I knew it was a car-related kind of thing, but yes.
Yeah. We kind of moved to that theory of midsection training 3 or 4 years ago, and we've always had programs. We've always hammered a midsection in our stuff, but I wasn't sure that the way we were doing it prior to development chassis integrity was transferring outside. Mm-hmm. And so we're interested in developing midsection strength and strength endurance that transfers to the real world. And so we were able to identify kind of in the strength conditioning terms, the different movements, flexion, rotation, isometric strength, and what we call total body core strength, mm-hmm. and design our programming around those movements, understanding that it's not only strength but also strength endurance. So we need to go relatively long with some of those circuits to develop the endurance side, and then also know that none of the work that you're going to do midsection wise likely is going to be laying on your back or on the floor, and so all of those exercises are done from a standing or kneeling position by a design. There's no sit-ups. We don't do any flexion. We just kind of found there's really not a lot of sit-ups in the real world in terms of the stresses that are on your midsection, which is a lot different than a lot of the midsection training you see now, where it's kind of six-pack sit-up driven. Ours isn't.
Not at all. Yeah, but you immediately see the application of it when you're supposed to move an 80-pound sandbag from the floor to the top of a 6-foot ladder. You're like, okay, I see how in the job I'm going to have to, and I have even if it's just your war bag, but you might have to be hoisting gear over a fence or assisting a partner or yourself over the fence, and getting something of dead weight from the ground up and over that fence is important. So when I saw that program, I was like, okay, I totally get that. I totally get why that's part of this programming. So one of the things I've noticed too is that it's definitely high intensity work, but you emphasize not redlining and not kind of blowing out. You want to work quickly and you want to work steady, but you don't want to. Your goal isn't for us to be totally redlined. Why is that intentional, and why is that?
Well, it kind of depends on what the element of the training session is. We definitely have work capacity focuses. I'm sure you've been pretty close to redlining. If not, you weren't running hard enough during the sprints.
Well, yeah, no, I guess sprint specific, but I mean, some of the weight training is move with a I think the phrase you use is move with a purpose between movements, but it's not, at least the way I've understood it, is not sprint from here to there and push as much weight as fast as you can and get your heart rate to come jumping out of your throat. You just want to be working hard.
Yeah, I think that, in some ways CrossFit has scarred the different elements of training a little bit.
Yeah, okay, that's why I'm kind of getting at.
When we're training strength, we're not interested in how hard you breathe in, we're interested in how much you can lift. And so we want you to work steadily and briskly through the sessions, not frantically. I'm interested in how much, I want you to get as much on that barbell as you can. I want to get you stronger at this part. And our chest integrity circuits were like, just work briskly, not frantically through them. Just grind through them. Just keep grinding.
Yeah.
But there are a couple elements to that. One of the things we kind of found is that if every session you got a red line, that gets old. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. How long is a cop's career? 30 years? Right? So, that's a lot of daily training where you got a red line every day. Excuse me.
Yeah, there's some discussion out there too that redlining like that, when you're already in a stressful job or you're sleep deprived and you're dealing with cortisol levels that are out of whack, that introducing excessive stress to your body intentionally is actually detrimental. I don't know if you have an opinion on that, but that's something I brought up before with others.
I don't know if I would agree with that necessarily.
Yeah.
Because the goal, I don't want the first time you have to redline to be during the real thing.
Sure.
So it's important, I think, that you know what that feels like, know that you can recover from it, but especially knows what it feels like before you get in some situation where you have to, and then you're just, in addition to the tactical and fear stress you're dealing with, the physical stress you're just not used to. So I kind of like to separate those two different worlds on the fitness side. That's one of the differences between our approach is we don't like to conflate fitness with wellness or, the mental recovery or, PSTD or whatever it be. I like to keep fitness separate, which is different than other approaches.
It's that's a fair point too. And I think when you talk about you don't want the first time to redline to be in the middle of the actual fight, one of the things I'll work out sometimes, and especially with your programming, with a 20-pound vest, right? It's just a tack vest I have that I've modified to have a weight place instead of plates, and it's important in my exercise to get into that red line in that vest, because it's different than when I am just in a t-shirt and my shorts and I red line at the gym, right? And how much quicker you red line because of this extra weight and your constriction on your body and all that. But anyone who's been in a foot chase knows that your heart rate and your ability to breathe and all those things is totally different in uniform than it is out of uniform. And I've been in foot chases before where I've started to, after it's resolved and, everything's over, but almost had this kind of panic attack where, am I going to be able to recover? Can I get my breath back? I'm breathing so hard. And it's because it's because I was not used to being in that state while wearing a vest, wearing a belt, wearing boots. And it was one of those things that I started implementing. I need to do more of, but getting used to that redlining in that constrictive environment. It's silly.
Yeah, in our experience, it's not only the weight of the vest, but just the constriction of the vest. Your lungs are smaller.
Oh, totally. Yeah, it prohibits. My ability to breathe in the vest is probably reduced, ballpark 20%. Of being able to get a full breath of lung air, like expand out, it's probably at least 20%. And then you add working hard to it and the heart rate and all that sort of stuff. It's a mess. It's a challenge. We need to figure this out. That's why we're doing this. So Rob, you work with a lot of, obviously military. You started with military guys, and that then evolved into the cops. We always seem to mirror and mimic in good ways what the military has done, because they are the first to try the newest and the best practices and have some of the resources we don't have. But do you find any differences between the demands on the military athlete versus the law enforcement or firefighter athlete?
That when I started working with law enforcement athletes, some of those differences weren't as obvious, but the more I've worked with them, there are some obstacles on the law enforcement side to tactical fitness that are not shared on the military side. One of the first things is that we call is a burden of constant fitness. And military guys, all tactical athletes kind of have this burden of constant fitness because you could always be called out. you can never really afford to take 6 months off and become a slob. You always have to be fit, which means you always have to be training, and that can become drudgery and old. We call it, or stale. We try to address that in our programming and some of the things that we do in our programming. But for law enforcement officers, that even military athletes, unless they're in a tier 1 tactical unit, know when they're going to get deployed. And so they can, in garrison, they can step away if they want to, maybe train for a triathlon and then come back and do the tactical training before deployment. Mm-hmm. That's not the case for law enforcement athletes, especially patrol, really anybody, where they're deployed every day. Every call can be a tactical, life-threatening situation. So the burden of constant fitness on law enforcement athletes is constant, and there's really no relief from it. It's just really a huge difference. The other thing on the law enforcement side is few law enforcement units or agencies or departments have a high jeopardy physical fitness test. Mm-hmm. There's lots of reasons for this: union resistance, lawsuits. You know better than me.
Oh yeah.
But without that high jeopardy physical fitness test, and high jeopardy means if you don't pass it, you can lose your job, which is what they have in the military. It's really hard to develop a good fitness culture. It's just hard without that minimum standard. It's just really difficult, and so it's just a really difficult thing to work around. Another element of that is that few only full-time, have I found, SWAT, SRT, and some of the federal SWAT teams get time on duty to train. But typical patrol and detective guys, they don't get time on duty to train like the military. Military come at 6, the first hour and a half is everybody's training, they're getting paid to do it. Mm-hmm. So that's another obstacle. Equipment to train. I mean, not every unit, law enforcement agency has an equipment and a space even to train on station. And so guys are, having to, train other gyms if they're doing it, or go to a commercial gym, or if they do have stuff, the department's trying to make I went and worked with the department in Layton, Utah, and of course they had one gym for the entire department, and every secretary and everything, and the place was full of treadmills. They had enough room for one rack and a bunch of dumbbells. Mm-hmm. And the rest of the place was jammed full of cardio machines for secretaries and stuff on their break. And so, I mean, it just wasn't set up. That's another obstacle that isn't shared by the military. And then finally, what's kind of interesting on the law enforcement side is what I call legacy athlete resistance. So that's the older. In the military, you reach 40 years old, and you're sitting on a desk. Even if you're a senior enlisted, chances are you're not on the tip of the spear anymore. You've got guys underneath you. You're in a leadership position. But it's not unusual to have law enforcement officers, well into their 50s, as patrolmen, detectives, still on the tip of the spear, even SWAT teams. Mm-hmm. But as you get older, of course, your physical abilities decline, which should mean you train harder. But a lot of those guys, they just don't like to train anymore, and so they'll say, "Hey, I've done this job for 30 years without training," and they're in a leadership position. And so you have a group of younger cops who say, "Hey, we want to get a space to train and some gear," and the older guy said, "I got this here without doing it. Why do you need it?" Or even worse, the legacy athletes will feel bad because the young guys are training and they're obviously out of shape. Kind of this what I call legacy athlete resistance. Anyway, they're just some obstacles that law enforcement athletes have that aren't to train on the fitness side that the military does not share. And it's been interesting to work with law enforcement athletes to help overcome these, and it's really in my work just really gave me so much admiration for the law enforcement athletes who do train, because they're probably paying it for themselves, using their own equipment they bought themselves, and doing it in their own time. And they're doing it because they're professionals, not because they have to take a test or somebody else is making them or watching them doing it. They're doing it because they're professional about their job.
Yeah. Yeah, it's those are all challenges we all face as an upward battle every day. And then when you're facing those battles, and you touched on a little bit, then there is that element of, the military guys, like, they get deployment orders, and they know they're going, and they know they're going into a fight, and for sure, right? It's guaranteed. You're going to Afghanistan. You're going to be in a combat zone, and we, of course, should be treating our streets as our combat zone in that sense, in that mindset. But it's easy to go that 30-year career and think, well, it hasn't happened yet, so maybe I won't go to the gym today. And that mental strength to continue at it for a whole career, that, like you just said, to the guys I see who are able to do that consistently for their whole career, it's impressive.
One of the interesting things that has come up, and as I've taught some of our programming courses to first responders, is addressing some of those, I guess, cultural issues within first responder units, and how do you think about fitness training? And a couple of things that we kind of advocate is, first, to make fitness a safety issue, in the sense that if you're not fit in your job, then you're a risk to yourself, you're a risk to your teammates, and you're a risk to the public you want to serve. And if you make it a safety issue, you may be able to get more traction with the command. Mm-hmm. At the same time, if the command is purposely sending out a detective or an officer who is not fit, it's like sending his team out with a weapon that may not fire, when it needs to. That's I wrote an essay, a blog, and it's fairly controversial. We're pretty edgy on this, I guess, maybe is the word, but we asked why first responders tolerate unfit officers and firemen, because that person could conceptually get you killed if they can't do their job from a fitness perspective. And why do you tolerate that? And why? But there is kind of this soft acceptance amongst, in some first responder units, of guys who are unfit. Mm-hmm. There's just this soft acceptance of it, and I think it's damaging to the unit for sure. And the other thing is, a lot of times when we work with units, there's this effort in first responder use to kind of bring together fitness along with wellness, diet, the mental recovery from stress, all together into one wellness package. And we don't really like to see that, because there may be lots of reasons that, the wellness and the mental stuff, obviously that stuff has a play into it. But when you start putting fitness to that, you start softening the importance of fitness too much. And so, for example, if you have guys who, are obviously out of shape and overweight, you need to clearly work on their diet and stuff like that. That doesn't mean they shouldn't be training hard, because that's what their job demands. Anyway, it's just a couple of different ways that we look at a first responder and law enforcement athlete fitness in particular, different than others or anybody else that I've seen out there. And we hopefully we understand the challenges in the law enforcement community for developing a tactical fitness programming and for sticking with it, but also understand that we think it's a personal responsibility of each individual athlete to be fit for their job, and as part of their professionalism to do so, no matter what it takes, even if they don't have command support, even if they don't get time on train. I mean, their teammates, the public, and their family, I think, demands that they do it. And I get emails. I got an email this morning from guys saying, hey, I do 12-hour shifts. I don't have a place to train. How do I do this? And I'm like, the only way you're going to make sure you train, you got to train before your shift. And, here's a plan you can do in your house, a pair of dumbbells. But there's just no way around it. You just don't have that support. That doesn't mean you can't train, though, because you can get killed at your job or get someone else killed if you're not fit. It's just the way it is. It's kind of a tough love element, and there's lots of obstacles. I wish it wasn't that way, but it is. And we just want to try to address the real world, maybe not the world we all wish for.
Yeah. Rob, I want to let you go. I know you've got stuff to tend to today. Mountain Tactical, tell me where people can find out more about you in your website and your programming.
Yeah, just everything's there at mtntactical.com, and then my email is just rob@mtntactical.com, and I answer dozens of email questions from tactical athletes every day almost. So I'm happy to help guide people to kind of what they need or answer their questions. I'm a pretty direct guy, so I'll tell you what you need, and it's up to you whether you take the medicine or not, I guess.
The website's great. There's lots of articles actually too, not specifically rated or not about fitness programming so much, but I mean, we got the quiet professional stuff today from an article you wrote, and I thought that was a great discussion about those things that connect us to our job, that mission first, working hard, the difference between experience and wisdom, doing the hard thing, trying to be humorous with yourself and show some humility. Those are all great things, and that's from a blog post that you wrote on your website. And there's lots of articles on there for the cops. There's a really good one. It's just snippets, but the one I really like too is my most dangerous on-the-job mistake and what I learned. And you had a lot of people write in with some of these really interesting experiences they had on the job, and some of those we can all learn from. So, Rob, thanks for what you do for the tactical athlete out there. Thanks for the programming. I have thoroughly enjoyed it, and can see the improvement and the difference. Just thank you for being out there and helping us help our communities.
Well, you're welcome, Garrett, and thank you for having me today.
All right, thanks for listening to the Squad Room. If you like what you heard today, if you got something out of this conversation with Rob, please consider leaving a review on iTunes. I read each and every one of them, but it also really helps spread the word of the show and get this message out to the people that need to hear it. If you heard something today that you know a friend or a loved one needs to hear, please tell them about the show. You can share this directly from thesquadroom.net, and you can email this episode directly to them. To keep up to date, you can text The Squad Room, all one word, to 44222 to get signed up for our mailing list directly from your phone. And, of course, we're on Instagram and Twitter at The Squad Room and our Facebook group. Also, many of you have asked how you can support the show. Well, here it is. If you go to patreon.com/The Squad Room, you can make a donation to help us cover expenses and expand the reach of the show. You select the donation amount and how long you want to contribute. It's that easy. It's patreon.com/The Squad Room, and Patreon is PATREON. Special thanks to the donors that we have, and I, like I say, I'm on the road and I don't have that list in front of me at the moment, but thank you very much for those that have already contributed. It really does help us keep the show moving forward. We'll have another episode next week. It'll be probably a briefing topic before we have another interview show, but until next time, take care of each other and stay safe.